So, Britain obviously is not doing very well. I saw a poll recently that suggested that Britain was the second most miserable country in the world.
Ooh, in the whole world.
Apparently so. You've got to take these things at face value. But I think it's safe to say that most people in Britain know that we're not going in a good direction. Whether it be left or right, in the centre, it doesn't matter what your politics are. We can all see the decline. It's undeniable at this point. And I wanted to go through some of the things that is being basically imposed upon us by our political class that isn't going to make it any better. It's going to make it a lot worse. And the priorities of our political class seem to be Pakistan for whatever reason. Apparently, UK taxpayers will spend 108 million on a climate investment fund in Pakistan. This is not where I wanted my money to go. I don't know what it even is or what it will do. I don't know why this is of any concern to us, why that level of money is going away, because that is a very significant sum of money. And this comes at the same time as this. So this is a Member of Parliament, Tahir Ali, and he said, "This week I attended a press conference ordained by Mohammed Yassin, another MP, where 20 cross-party British parliamentarians requested for an international airport in Mirpur, which is, of course, is Pakistan. There's been a long-standing promise for an international airport in Mirpur, which has yet to be met. This caused significant issues to a number of my constituents who are having to drive over 3 hours to get to the nearest airport in Pakistan." And this is Britain's problem how? I failed to see. So I'm going to read out every single person on this list because I think we should be naming traitors to our country. Debbie Abrams, Zubair Ahmed, Tahir Ali, Rosanna Allen Khan, you can see a bit of a theme here, Stella Creasy, Tan Desi, James Frith, Gil Furness, Adan Hussein, Imran Hussein, Lord Qurban Hussein, Afzal Khan, Abid Sam Mohammed, Lord Mohammed Tinsley, Andrew Pakes, Yasmin Qureshi, Naz Shah, Baggy Shankar.
Is that real?
That's a name.
Baggy Shankar, the Honourable Baggy Shankar MP. Okay, that's the thing.
Great
That's a
gang
person,
member's
isn't it?
name there, if you wear really baggy trousers. Zara Sultana as well, final one. So what you're seeing there is basically a list of foreign people and a few leftists. You homegrown garden variety leftists.
Completely just trying to, and looks like successfully, stealing money
Yes.
from us in order to pay for their sort of, their tribal interests, their racial, ethnic, real national and tribal interests.
Because,
Brilliant.
of course, the last thing Britain needs after suffering under the Pakistani child rape gangs is an airport that makes it easier for Pakistanis to come here.
Heaven forbid that Pakistani people in Pakistan should need to drive more than 3 hours to get to an airport. What nonsense.
It's not under the control of the British Raj anymore. It's not our responsibility. They wanted independence. It's not our responsibility that we build an airport. You know, if you want to come under the dominion of the empire again, maybe there's some discussion. Not that I want you.
Yeah, don't want 'em, no. It's a long-standing promise. Oh, was it? Oh, okay. By who?
Yeah.
When? Or someone like Brown or Blair or something promised it, just said it years ago, and now they're like, no, give us the £100 million or whatever it is.
Pakistan has a population about double that of the UK, doesn't it?
It's more, I don't know.
If not more. And so why are they not able to build their own airports? You know, it's not like the notion of an airport is particularly difficult to grasp. They have them already. Why is it our problem? I don't know. But as The Spectator has pointed out here, Pakistani origin men are up to 4 times more likely to be reported to the police for child sex grooming offences than the general population in England and Wales. That was some new data that came out, which, yeah, great. Why are we doing things for these people then?
Per capita, 400% more likely. Okay.
Yeah, it's awful. And this sort of thing, of course, not drawn to your attention often by the mainstream media, and that is why you need to be supporting Lotus Eaters. We make no money from YouTube. We had all of our ad revenue cancelled arbitrarily. Well, I think we know why they did that. But you can support us either by signing up to our website and getting access to all of our premium content, which is an absolute steal. We've got a lot of good stuff on there, but you can also, if you're not into that, you don't want to subscribe to our website, you can, get a one-off payment, get a mug or a t-shirt. We've got lots of the Islander merch in at the minute, and this will only be in for a while we're doing the sort of run of the current edition of the Islander, and so get them while you can, because these t-shirts will be gone. They'll be limited edition. There'll be people in 50 years' time. There'll be Lotus Eaters artifact collectors, and you'll be selling these for many, many thousands of pounds, I'm sure, when, it's obvious that that's going to happen. So invest now, although that's probably not something I should say. Buy a t-shirt, don't invest in it. But anyway, back to what we're talking about. It's also worth mentioning that migrants overstaying visas account for over a third of the asylum claims. So they had a visa to come here to either work or study, and then all of a sudden they're claiming asylum. So they can apply for this visa, and they're like, I'm not an asylum seeker now, but all of a sudden I've become one, which just is another piece of evidence on the mountain of evidence to suggest that it's all spurious claims. It's all people that are economic chances coming here because they have better financial prospects than their home country. And the way things are going, that's not going to last much longer, because we're going on the way to becoming a form of failed state at this rate.
I do think that this actually bleeds over into something I'm going to speak about in my segment, but this idea that if we just ask people to go home, go back to where they came from, their country of origin, that they'll do it.
No, of course not.
No, even if you give them a small financial incentive, they still don't do it, because it's been tried in Denmark and I think Sweden, a couple of places. No, because even if you promise them a few £1,000s or a few thousand euros, no, it's still better to live in Copenhagen or Manchester or London or Birmingham or wherever than in sort of rural Pakistan, where you came from, or rural, or not even rural, or urban Nairobi or something. So, yeah, I feel it's a bit of a cope to say, if we just stop more people coming in, the general flow will mean that they'll all eventually leave. No.
I have a very controversial opinion around this sort of thing, that I think that every single foreign national should have a figure calculated to their name as to whether they're a net contributor or a net drain to the economy. And if they are a net drain, they should lose their citizenship if they had it and be sent home regardless of if they're a passport holder or not. And if they are a net drain, also their assets should be taken to pay for the costs that they've incurred on the British people. Because if you've come here, run up a debt, either with our government or, privately or whatever it might be, you've run up this excessive debt and then you're relying on the British people to pay for it, then even if you're deported, you're still better off having done that otherwise, without that financial aspect. And I think that it's something that has to be done. Otherwise, it's basically just been a massive multi-million person raid on the British taxpayer. And it's brutally unfair. And I haven't really heard many people talking about that, because obviously it sounds a bit extreme. However, if you're looking at it from the perspective of fairness, in that it shouldn't be up to the British people to be ripped off by people and then pay to also send those people back to their home
and finally pay for their flight home
exactly.
Right?
It's a massive form of injustice, even if they do finally get sent home. And so I think how it is done is very important, and I think keeping fairness in mind is very, very important. And with that being said, fairness apparently doesn't exist in Britain, because a doctor has not been struck off by a panel over a one-off rape. Apparently you've got a one strike and you're out rule now for sexual assault, which for a doctor I don't think should happen. What is this doctor's name, you might imagine? Dr. Aloye Foyama, which is a Nigerian name. So a foreign man comes to our country as a doctor, probably with lower standards than our doctors, because of course that's true of many foreign doctors. But a medical tribunal concluded that, and this is the words of the BBC, on the balance of probabilities that he did do this thing, which he denied, and then they said, well, they're not going to strike him off anyway, because and there's talk about victim blaming and things like this. Who cares? The guy should not be here in the first place, especially if he's got these sorts of circumstances surrounding him. I would not feel comfortable seeing a doctor like that, let alone if I were, say, a young woman. Why should women be forced to see this doctor? Because, of course, a lot of the time you don't choose the doctor you see, do you, on the NHS?
No, not at all.
And so this person I see as a danger to people, and now they're just being kept around. They're not really being punished, which is the complete opposite of fairness and morality. And there's also this. There was much discussion about the pre-sentence reports, and basically when someone is convicted of a crime, the courts can use a pre-sentence report or a PSR to help determine a custodial sentence or a community order. Basically determines what they're sentenced with. And this includes things like their personal history, their age, education, family background, employment status, living conditions, mental health concerns, and drug and alcohol dependencies. So these are things that are relevant. I think many of these things are more likely to damn than help them. But the Sentencing Council is a body that's intended to be independent of the government, and they decided to change their guidelines to courts in England and Wales. And they recommended that people from these specific groups use a PSR. And they say there's a whole number of them. If they're a young adult, 18 to 25 years old, is female, is from an ethnic minority, cultural minority, and or faith minority, is pregnant, is a sole or primary carer or dependent relatives, has disclosed they are transgender, has addiction issues, has chronic medical conditions or physical disabilities, okay. If they're a victim of domestic, physical or sexual abuse, all sorts of different crimes, basically, which makes a bit more sense, okay. These are sorts of things that you might look at and think, okay, that does make sense as to why they might be a criminal, because they've experienced crime themselves. Of course, people who are victims of crime are also more likely to be perpetrators of crime. But the things that stick out here are, is female, ethnic minority, or transgender? Because what you've not noticed here, there's no category for men. There's no category for being white. So what this effectively means is that these extra details for their case that have an effect of potentially softening their sentence will only be applied, or would have only been applied, to people who weren't white men. I imagine probably straight white men as well. So it's just a further entrenchment of the discrimination from our government against us.
Yeah, when people have said about two-tier policing, two-tier justice, well, this is it in black and white.
Well, the funny thing is that the Justice Secretary, the Labour Justice Secretary, apparently agrees with you, Bo.
Really?
I know, that's what I thought. So, here is a BBC article talking about it, and it says, it's prompted accusations of two-tier justice, with Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood arguing it amounts to differential treatment because pre-sentence reports were encouraged for some but not others, which is true. But whether I believe you're authentic about actually believing that, and I've got some evidence to believe that you're not in a second, but it carries on to say that they were actually looking at surgically removing, these are their words, particular sections of the new guidelines, and they're going to be trying to remove them. And then it says they will hope to rush it through both houses of Parliament, but a Ministry of Justice source admitted there is no world in which those guidelines don't come into effect as planned on Tuesday. Well, we're in that world because the Sentencing Council suspended these guidelines after there was backlash against them. Mainly the government saying that they were going to push back against them. And it's worth mentioning as well that when people were talking about this two-tier justice and two-tier policing, they were called extreme right-wing people. And now you have a government minister saying exactly the same thing. It's funny, that, isn't it? And it is also worth mentioning as well that this is the same Ministry of Justice here, that it's talking about given priority bail for ethnic minority suspects. So it's funny, this is, by the way, only the 30th of March, so they must presume that the electorate has a very, very short memory. So I'm going to read a little bit from this.
And obviously don't mean the ethnic minority on the global scale, because that is
No.
white people.
Mm-hmm. Of course they mean people with more skin pigmentation, of course.
I do wonder at some point in the 2050s or 2060s, when they're no longer the minority, we are truly the minority in our own ancestral homeland.
Hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, hopefully. But if it does, whether all this will still apply, or whether, or how, or to what extent they'll do a 180 on it, they'll flip it, or just never get mentioned again.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not coming from a place of principle, is it?
Well, no,
it's just coming from a place of...
anti-whiteism.
Exactly. And I think what all of this is about is this sort of thing, right? This is about as signature Tony Blair as Keir Starmer has ever got. He's writing in the Daily Mail here, I think. Believe me, I get it. You are right to be angry about illegal migration. And he says that he's angry about it as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Of course, it's coming up to local council elections, and at the minute, the Labour Party are sort of worried about both the Conservatives and Reform taking seats from them. And so these two things, what he's basically done here is by talking about illegal migration and talking about two-tier justice, is trying to defang the so-called political right. Because, of course, these were the sort of two main Reform talking points, and now Keir Starmer sort of absorbed them. He can take some of the steam away from some of their groups. Of course, I don't think there's any meaningful difference between any of those three parties, but I mean, there are slight differences, but none of it will go to actually resolve the problems this country faces.
It's just obviously lies, isn't it? Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You remember when David Cameron said, "Oh, multiculturalism has failed." All right, yeah, but you still just lent into it even more, if anything.
Mm-hmm. And of course, remember Keir Starmer, when he was a lawyer, worked on many asylum cases. If he didn't believe in illegal migration and asylum, he wouldn't have done that, would he? And I don't believe people really change once they're an adult. I think they pretty much stay the same. I don't believe people turn over a new leaf in this sort of respect very often, or at least it's very, very rare.
Well, it's just complete nonsense. If anything, it's setting himself up to say, "I'm really angry about illegal migration. Let's make safe and easy routes for them instead."
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest.
These are insane globalists who mean to demographically change the nation forever and destroy us.
Yeah, no one should be taking this at face value. We all know what they truly believe, and it's not about protecting the native British population, is it?
No.
And we can see that from this sort of thing, right? As the holy month of Ramadan ends, I wish Muslims in the UK and across the world a blessed and joyful Eid. And this was, of course, on Mother's Day weekend. You know, nothing about Easter.
Yeah, Lent, Easter, Mother's Day. Nope, Eid.
Yeah, the only thing he mentioned.
Okay, dude. Okay, bro.
Mm-hmm. And even the British Army got in on this, showing this must
Why not? Why not?
Must be AI generated, because it's worth pointing out that more Muslims in Britain joined ISIS than the army. So I don't know what they're celebrating. Thank you for giving us enemies to fight. Thank you for propping up the military-industrial complex with foreign wars. Is that what they're doing here? I don't know. But it's just shameful. In fact, I think it's a school in Dagenham confirmed at very short notice that it's actually closing its doors so that staff may celebrate Eid. So great.
Robert Clack, I know that school.
Really?
My mum went to that school.
No way.
Yeah.
That makes it even more sad, doesn't it?
In Essex, in Dagenham, yeah.
I thought you might, because of course Dagenham, Essex, your neck of the woods, isn't it?
Yeah. I grew up 2 stops from Dagenham.
Blimey. Lots of Muslims there around that.
No, when I grew up in the 80s and 90s,
mm-hmm.
you'd never see a hijab. No.
I'd never seen one until I moved out of, Devon. I'd never even seen someone wear one. It was a bit surreal. I was like, oh, do people wear that out and about? Do they? Okay. I thought maybe she just had a cold head at first. Shows how naive I used to be, I suppose. But we never used to have to know, did we? And there's some even more frustrating things. So this is the £2.5 million mega mosque being constructed at the edge of the Lake District. Let me remind people, or if you're from outside of the UK, let me introduce you to the Lake District. Here it is. I don't see, all of those, I forgot what they're called, those towers, the Muslim
Minarets?
That's what I was going to say, but I always think is that the little domes you get in Orthodox churches, or is that a different name? I always get those two mixed up, which is a bit embarrassing, not a dig at Orthodox Christianity, but yeah, the Lake District, very beautiful, quite rural, not a large Muslim population. I see these mosques because they also looked at building a 10,000 strong cemetery in Cornwall, and Cornwall is still like 95% ethnically British at the very least. I know the Cornish might dispute being English, but they are really. I'm going to get some hate, but yeah, they are acting more or less like a vanguard in doing these sorts of things, aren't they? They're saying nowhere in this country is safe. We're going to set up a mosque and then the Muslims will come. It's not for local demand, not that we should pander to that anyway. I don't think there should be a single mosque in Britain whatsoever, because I don't see it as compatible with our way of life. We've been enemies for 1,000 years and I don't think anything's changed about that.
Yeah, I would like to see the same number of mosques in Britain as there are cathedrals in Saudi Arabia.
Big fat zero.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Now, of course, this is an exercise in dominance, in bite and hold. Yeah, they'll create essentially, metaphorically speaking, a castle around which they fortify, and yeah, it's a bite and hold tactic. Yeah, it's an invasion. Yeah, it's an invasion that's happening here.
The only sort of upside I can see is those naive sort of liberals that live in their nice white areas might finally realise that, hey, I'm not safe out here, and that it's everyone's problem. What we've been saying for years and years now.
And this idea, I'll just move. I'll go and live in Australia. I'll go and live in America or something. Well, it's coming for you there.
Well, the point of globalism is that it's across the world, right? And nowhere's safe. So you either defeated at home or you're forever made a nomad, which is no way of living. I don't think, certainly not for an Englishman. And then there are other silly things going on as well, like this one. This is something about farming, where the land use framework, which states that 9% of England's farmland will need to be taken out of production for climate goals, and this is going under the radar for many farmers, and they're not aware that there is this goal. Of course, Britain still imports a significant portion of its food. And the main pressure point in which the British Empire was destroyed by people in the US government, not holding the US citizens account, of course. It was people in the US government, probably dead now, I imagine. They used our importation of food as a way of basically getting one over on us. And the same rules apply here, that if you have to import food, it is a national security concern because it's a massive vulnerability. If you can be blockaded, then you can be starved, and then it will be like a siege. You could treat the British Isles like a castle, and if you have it surrounded, then you're going to starve eventually, or you're forced to come out of your siege. And this is a massive, massive overlooked problem. We should be producing as much food as humanly possible at home. And although I'm averse to subsidising most things, I think that if we have to subsidise agriculture, it would be one of those things that I think you can justify, not only from the sense of it's essential to the British way of life and is important to have locally produced food that is good for you, but also it makes sense for national security, as I alluded to earlier.
Dig for victory.
Exactly.
Everyone should have an allotment.
It's starting to get like that, isn't it?
I did an interview with Roreg Nationalist a while ago, and he talked all about how in Russia, particularly in Russia, there's this culture of, obviously if you live in a flat, it's not on, but most people that have got a garden, any sort of garden really, they actually use it to grow things like potatoes, tomatoes, runner beans, whatever you can really.
Most people I know do that as well, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe in Devon. That wasn't a dig.
True.
That wasn't a dig. at Devon or you.
No, of
But
course not.
if you live in, like I say, if you live in a block of flats on a concreted over estate, it's just not possible. But
Difficult. Maybe at best you could have like a little one of those things that hangs over your balcony.
grow a few herbs.
Yeah.
Grow
parsley and thyme there.
Grow a tomato plant and you get like 6 tomatoes out of it every 3 months. But no, normal. If you've got a garden, apparently it's just in Russia anyway. Loads of people, most people, and it's like something like a heart. It's like it actually yields a lot, even a small patch. Like as much as a third or a half of all the food you eat, you've actually grown yourself.
It's one of the most sensible things I think you can do, because not only is it just good from sort of making sure you have your own food supply sense, but also it'll probably be healthier for you than a lot of the other things you can buy in a supermarket.
If you're not spraying it down with pesticides and things, which obviously you wouldn't be.
It's also worth mentioning as well that British Steel has announced it will close its 2 blast furnaces in Scunthorpe, and this means that all steel production in the UK has now ended for the first time in 150 years, and of course
since the Industrial Revolution.
And of course we are the country of the Industrial Revolution, and now we're no longer producing steel. So it's sort of an end of an era, but in a very sad way. And in fact, we're the only country in the G7 that is unable to make new steel. And of course, yes, of course,
it was Chinese.
The Chinese owned it, and they rejected a $500 million government subsidy. You shouldn't have ever let your steel infrastructure be owned by the Chinese. Another case of this is something that is of national security concern. Complete joke, complete oversight that they've even allowed this situation to be the case. But yes, we're the only G7 unable to make new steel for ourselves. Don't know how this is in our interest at all. It's just embarrassing, really. We should be making it.
The irony of it. If anyone's interested, I've got an 18-part series on the life of Chairman Mao on my channel, History Bro, which I don't plug enough.
It's very good.
And on that, I concentrate mainly, it's all of Mao's life, but I concentrate massively on the Great Leap Forward. And anyway, Mao, starting in the late 40s, was obsessed with competing with Britain, specifically Britain, in terms of steel manufacturing. Because at that time, Britain was the number one, or actually United States had, anyway, when Mao was younger in the 20s and 30s, Britain was the number one steel manufacturer in the whole world. And so he became, later in adulthood, when he was master of all China, became obsessed with trying to get China to catch up to Britain, let alone overtake them. And now, look what...
Tables have turned,
God, I mean, talk about the tables turned, yeah.
Mao's had his way, apparently.
Yeah, they've finally completely destroyed our ability to make any steel.
Well, we've sort of destroyed it ourselves.
Well, yeah.
We don't want to give them too much credit here.
Yeah.
So
it's clear as day, isn't it? When it's failing, and we say to the Chinese company, "Look, we'll give you the money to keep it going." They're like, "No, let it die.
It's not even worth it.
Just let it die."
Well, obviously they're probably doing it to make us weaker, aren't they? That's what's going on.
I would. Of course, yeah. It's a strategic decision. Yeah.
Because why else would you turn down a free 500 million? I know. If the government wants to give me 500 million, I'll not let them down. I'll make steel with my bare hands if you want. So there's also the realisation that 25% of Britain is now apparently disabled. This is, of course, to take advantage of the welfare state. That's probably the only reason. Other than that, there are lots of falling anvils or something that are just causing lots of accidents. I don't think so.
Just walking around Swindon, I see a guy in a wheelchair, but he's walking his feet along. Like, he's not doing the hand things. He's slowly walking his feet along in the wheelchair. It's like, do you need a wheelchair? I saw another guy. You ever see someone using crutches when they're genuinely using the crutch because one foot's off the floor? You ever see people just walking around but with crutches as well?
I have seen that, yeah.
I see a number of people in Swindon doing that. It's like, you don't need crutches. If you're... Yeah, the amount of abuse and fraud that goes on in this country to do with that you're ill, whether it's physically or mentally. The amount of abuse of it
is
astronomical.
Really bad. Also, we don't want to go too far, though, and sort of go the Big Lebowski route, where they pick up Mr. Lebowski, and he
This
actually
guy walks.
and then he's actually disabled.
Yeah, of course, if anyone's genuinely disabled,
Mhm.
I don't begrudge them. But that's the whole point. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
The differentiation between those genuine cases.
Well, the actual disabled people are missing out because of all of the people
Yeah,
that are basically being chancers and trying to
yeah.
make money from this scheme. So, everyone should be annoyed at this. There's no one that shouldn't be. And of course, you shouldn't be tarring actual disabled people for the scammers' work either. Also, there was this. Toddler kicked out of nursery for being transphobic. A toddler. Apparently...
Is it real? That's not a April Fool's?
No, that's real. That was
Real one.
31st of March.
Okay.
So apparently, statistics show that 94 pupils at state primary schools were suspended or permanently excluded for transphobia and homophobia in 2022 to 23. This included 10 pupils from year 1 and 3 from year 2, where the maximum age is 7. I don't understand that wording. And it says one of these included a child of nursery age, the data show. So yes, a nursery-age child, a toddler, as they say, was suspended for something that they'll obviously not understand, and nor should they. And it's just child cruelty, really. I think there's no reason to do this to very young kids that don't know better, even if it were the right thing to do. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what they define as transphobia could be any old thing. Probably a lot of the things we say could be defined as that. But
I feel like the adults, probably the Karens, that got these kids in quote-unquote trouble for whatever nonsense, they're the ones that should be held to account. They're the ones that should face some sort of tribunal.
they're basically bullying kids for their own insecurities, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
Who cares? Who
Trying
cares
to-
what a toddler says about you?
Trying to indoctrinate the child as young as possible before they can possibly understand. When you're a toddler, when you're in primary school, you've got no concept of sexuality or any sort of carnal desire or anything, let alone the subversion of that with homosexuality or transgenderism or cross-dressing.
It's just impossible
It's
for
just-
them to comprehend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why?
It's awful.
We live in a mad time.
It
Truly mad.
gets worse than that. Apparently, a parent was arrested for complaining about the daughter's school in a WhatsApp group. And it was a perfectly legitimate complaint just about how it was being run. It wasn't like he was doing anything particularly bad. He was arrested on suspicion of harassment, malicious communications, and causing a nuisance on school property. But I thought it was in a WhatsApp group. Apparently, he was held in a jail cell at the police station for 11 hours. They apparently took their fingerprints and searched them as well for complaining about the school. Maybe there's more to this. Apparently they said they had previously been banned from entering the school. So I don't know whether there's some sort of continued feud here that's causing it. But this is what's being discussed, and I don't think people complaining over WhatsApp should ever lead them into trouble, no matter the circumstances, because it's just written words on a screen. Who cares?
I would be so sarcastic in the interview room if that were me. I'd just take the piss as much as possible out of the interviewing officers about
Well, they
about
would
the
deserve
whole
it, yeah.
the whole situation.
It's
Yeah,
a
let's go
ridiculous
before a
state, yeah.
magistrate. Let's go before a magistrate. Yeah, I'm under arrest. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm really worried. Yeah. Yeah, no, let's go to court. Yeah, let's go to court. Let's see how this goes.
I don't know what's
It's
happening
cops, it's
anymore.
Karen cops, isn't it? It's Karens all the way down.
Karen's all the way down. There you go.
Or little Hitlers. They don't have to be women.
That's true.
Little Hitlers, people have got a tiny amount of influence or power and just instantly abuse it as much as they possibly can. Scumbags.
So much of it, though, isn't there? Here's Keir Starmer talking about banning ninja swords. I know we've already talked about this. He's also going to host a round table with the creators of Adolescence, that Netflix show that is being forced down our throats, and a group of charities and young people, because this show's going to solve all problems for young people, apparently. And yes,
PSYOP, a clear PSYOP.
oh yeah, of course it is.
One of the most obvious PSYOP since Greta.
So the final thing I wanted to mention is that at least America is putting pressure on us here, because they're basically saying you can't have trade unless you have free speech, which is at least something. There's a glimmer of hope for some sort of improvement from pressure from the US. But that's about it. But yes, it's a pretty grim situation. I just wanted to give everyone an update, and it's not good. If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.